Have you always wanted to learn martial arts but don't have the time or access to go to a full-on dojo? Now is your chance to learn exactly how you can learn martial arts at home without needing any experience whatsoever. In this video, I will cover the equipment you need, the space required, and what techniques, drills, and exercises to focus on. But most importantly, I'll discuss the mindset needed to train at home by yourself and get great results when it comes to getting leaner, stronger, and more confident, as well as building solid self-defense skills too. And I'll also cover why this mindset will feed into everything that you do. And I'll even share how you can get better results than students who go to in-person martial arts classes, all by making sure that you have the right training principles and systems in place. Training at home, and especially by yourself, can be a real struggle, but it's never been easier to get access to the wisdom of the right martial arts teacher for you. The biggest issue that you'll actually come across is the lack of instant access to feedback compared to being at an in-person martial arts class. However, by applying the right student or white belt mentality, this won't be as much of an issue. In fact, your progress can be even faster as you only have yourself to rely on for self-correction and analysis rather than relying on an instructor or fellow students. The only person, remember, you need to impress is yourself. So anytime you do something worth putting effort into, ask yourself, would future me be proud? If the answer is yes, you've done your job. So stop seeing the lack of training partners as a reason not to start, and think of ways to excel regardless, and watch how that mentality will transform your life. Here is how you can get better results training at home than in the dojo. Just a few years ago, I used to have my own martial arts school, and I also grew up in my dad's old school dojo from 4 years old. And when it came to the progress of students, both good and bad, I noticed that there were two types of students. Group A students, they came to classes and then maybe they worked hard there and they came back again to do the same. But Group B students not only came to classes, they worked harder in each session and they also trained at home, usually for a small amount of time each day, say 15 to 30 minutes, or they just did a longer session once or twice a week at home. Now, even though it only added up to an extra hour or two a week of training, Group B students always progressed much faster. They not only had exponential growth in their techniques and their ability to string it all together, but they also had a much deeper understanding of the principles, the concepts, and the philosophies embedded into martial arts, as they even read the books that I recommended as part of their learning and grading part 2. And interestingly enough, sometimes Group B students even would miss classes due to, say, work or personal commitments. But when they came back to classes, they weren't actually any worse off, as they were still training at home. But when Group A students missed classes and they weren't doing any training at home, there was a significant decrease in their martial arts ability and even their mental progress too. The lesson here is that, of course, the ideal scenario is that you spend hours a week in the dojo as well as hours a week training at home. But this is not realistic for many people, and especially for people like my students who are busy dads, as well as professionals or business owners. So, if you're a busy man or dad who wants to use martial arts as the best vehicle to get in shape and learn a great skill whilst you're at it, then you can get great results from just training at home, all by using the right strategies that I will share with you now. Before we get into the specifics of how to do martial arts at home, it's worth touching on what the best martial arts style for training at home is. To keep it simple, I would suggest you stick with the striking type of martial art, like boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, Wing Chun, and so on. Why? Well, it's very simple. If you take up a style like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, judo, or any other grappling style, you'll be stuck with using weighted dummies for training, and the feedback loop in this kind of style is not as effective when done solo compared to striking styles. Now, I'm mostly focused on kickboxing and other striking styles, but I don't want you to just do that because that's what I do. I actually want you to understand why. Now, I'll create a deeper video on this later, but for now, whatever martial art you do, please stay away from fake ones like cardio boxing or cardio kickboxing or boot camp boxing workouts. These are not martial arts. Instead, learn a real martial art so you can build a warrior's physique and learn life-saving self-defense skills too. People often wonder how they can train martial arts at home without a full dojo setup. The bare minimum you need is your body and just a little bit of space. I've actually had students who live in a shared house and their only free space is their bedroom. So if they can do it, then you can too. And the truth is, you don't need much room. but an ideal amount of space would be 3 meters by 3 meters or more, as this will give you sufficient space to move around and practice your martial arts with a more reality-based and dynamic feel to it. And getting a few extra bits of equipment will be a great addition, but it's not impossible to train without them. Here's what I'd recommend: weighted wrist or egg weights, and ankle weights, boxing gloves, hand wraps if you're using a punch bag, an agility ladder, a mirror, and a round timer app. And if you have enough space, then a skipping rope, a freestanding punch bag, or hanging punch bag would be great further additions. When you're learning martial arts, a huge emphasis needs to be placed on perfecting single techniques and your foundations. For example, you want to make sure that your jab, your front kick, your knees, your elbows, and roundhouse kicks are all deadly weapons. And instead of trying to learn all the techniques under the sun, it's best to focus on learning the fundamentals first, getting to at least a proficient level with them, and then adding in new techniques afterwards. And I know it sounds boring, or it may sound boring, but it's not if you structure your training properly. Think about it. There are so many ways that you can throw a jab. I'll give you a few examples. You can do a step jab, you can do a snap jab, a low jab, a twisting jab, an upwards jab, a feint or dummy jab, and a counter jab, and so on. So you see, simply by applying different scenarios to the same technique, there are already 7 ways to jab just from this short list I mentioned. And not only will this engage you mentally, it also teaches you how to make your martial arts training contextual to the situation at hand. And this is what makes your training more realistic and makes it more lifelike. I recommend learning the basic 6 punches. So that's your jab, cross, left hook, left uppercut, right uppercut, and the basic kicks, which are knees, front kick, and low roundhouse kick to begin with. So that's already at least 9 techniques, depending on how you count the front and the rear sides. And then it's also an infinite number of different combinations too. And if you watch any professional level fighters, you'll actually find the basic techniques are the most commonly used ones. So focus on being the master of the few and not the amateur of the many. Now, when it comes to your foundations, you need to take your stance, your footwork, your rhythm, your balance, and many more athletic skills like this seriously too. You can have the best techniques in the world, but if they're laid on the worst base for them to strike from, you will not be able to inflict the raw power, the speed, and the damage that you need into your target. So spend time working your different stances like the front stance, the side stance, long stance, as well as your strong and your weak side. This will give you the strongest possible base from which you can attack and defend from almost effortlessly. Once you've spent some considerable time familiarizing yourself with the basic techniques, now it's time to put them together in combinations in an artistically violent fashion. And any good fighter or martial artist can string great combinations together, and they do it almost seamlessly. But the question is, how do they do it? Well, they understand exactly what opportunities arise by studying themselves, their opponent, and their environment all at the same time. And that's what's great about martial arts. It brings about a level of awareness unlike any other. Or wu wei, meaning inaction or effortless action. Wu wei is the idea that we should move through life with a sense of ease and flow, not to struggle against the natural order of things. When we try to control everything, we only end up getting in our own way. But when we let go and allow things to happen naturally, we can find effortless flow. Non-action can sound like a cop-out, but it's actually quite the opposite. It's not about doing nothing. You have to be present, yet without thoughts. You have to be focused, yet able to adapt. And you have to be striving, yet without attachment. This is the power of a great combination in action. Combinations are simply 2 or more techniques strung together in a sequence. For example, a jab, cross is a classic yet simple 2-part combination, but a head jab, a low cross, head hook, post to switch roundhouse is a lot more complex and is a 5-part combination. And there's no point doing complex combinations until you've at least got a basic understanding of the simpler ones. Again, just like in the previous section where I said to perfect your single techniques and foundations, you need to do the same here with your combinations too. I'd recommend starting with 2 to 4-part combinations, which are mostly attack based. Once you're familiar with this level and number of parts in a combination, then you can start to add in defensive parts, increase the number of parts, and even counter-attacking parts too. Next, let's turn to putting these combinations together in a free-flowing format with one of the best training tools that there is. Shadowboxing is the ultimate tool for progressing your martial arts creativity, style, and skill. There is nothing like it to build your flow state with such conviction. Witness any great fighter shadowboxing and it's like a work of art. It's like they're dancing, but just under a different set of lights. And when someone knows how to shadowbox, they typically know how to translate that into real self-defense and sparring scenarios. If you don't know, shadowboxing is simply the act of fighting an imaginary enemy by striking the air with your techniques. So you know I'm talking from experience here. My biggest martial arts insights and gains came through self-experimentation as well as exploration of concepts, techniques, and combos. I arrived at these insights through thousands of hours and hours of shadowboxing. It's time for me, myself, and I to just think, see, and feel my way and my martial arts style. To see where I'm going wrong, where I'm falling short, and where I can improve. But when teaching students in my old martial arts school, I found that most people actually didn't like shadowboxing. And when I dug deeper, it was mostly because they weren't good at it and felt embarrassed doing it in front of other people. Be humble enough to know you will be bad when you start shadowboxing. You will feel awkward, uncoordinated, and maybe a bit stiff too. But be resilient enough to know that with consistency, you will improve as you understand the art and yourself more. Most people think it is the embarrassment of shadowboxing in front of others that makes them feel uncomfortable. However, those same feelings of discomfort will haunt them when they are training at home alone too. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. So remember, the presence of others doesn't create feelings of discomfort or embarrassment. It's all in your mind. So learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if you truly embrace shadowboxing, then you will find yourself a cut above the rest, even compared to those students who only train in a dojo. If you really want to learn how to do martial arts at home, you better be prepared to get fitter and healthier at the same time too. Sure, if your martial arts training is structured properly, you'll also get fitter at the same time. But it's wise to have a well-planned training program that also involves functional strength training to build muscle, get leaner and reduce body fat, as well as release techniques to get rid of aches, pains, and bad posture. And you definitely want to make sure that you have your nutrition covered, your mental growth catered for, and other lifestyle improvements involved too. Remember, when martial arts is done properly, it's a way of life. And if you don't want to just learn how to do martial arts, but also how to be a martial artist, then treating this as a whole mind, body, and spirit change and endeavor is what is going to make it and give you the best transformation. Learn in 5 minutes what took me 10 years to truly understand about how to use the human body to its maximal potential. And I'm still learning. This underrated hack will give you the ultimate edge mentally and physically. I reached a level up in my martial arts path when I dug deep into human movement patterns, also known as biomechanics. Rather than needing to learn these, it is more important to unlearn our damaging and inefficient movement patterns caused by modern lifestyles. Just take a look at how effortlessly children move. This is not just because they are lighter and they have more energy. They move more efficiently, and their movement patterns haven't been destroyed by living a sedentary lifestyle. And this is where the mainstream fitness industry and many fad fitness followers go wrong, because it's not true that any form of fitness, exercise, or training class will benefit you. Without a true understanding of how the human body has been designed to move, a bad training methodology will cause you serious injury and long-term damage. But most fitness professionals don't understand this, and it will completely invalidate their training methodology. In other videos, I have shared about general biomechanics principles, but here I'll relate them just to martial arts. The key biomechanics principles to follow when looking at martial arts and movement through a biomechanics lens are: when you're throwing punches, there is always a pushing and a pulling movement. For example, when you execute a jab cross, as the jab is moving towards the target, your opposite side should be pulling back for maximal power and reach. Next, connect the whole kinetic chain when executing your techniques. A simple example is when you're throwing a front kick. Most people think the power comes from pushing off the ground only and kicking harder, but your maximum power output comes from doing that and also swinging the kicking arm past your body as you kick and leaning back slightly too. Next, optimal movement is rotation based. Even classic straight techniques like a cross generate their raw power during rotation. Think about the rear foot rotating so that the punch reaches further and the power increases. Apply this principle along with the previous two and you'll feel the difference instantly. There are many more biomechanics principles to follow when training martial arts, which I can cover in a future video. And just like the Group B students I mentioned earlier, they understood the importance of mastering their biomechanics early on. It's a genuine cheat code to use, whilst others get stuck thinking that they just need to improve their techniques. If you understand these insights clearly enough, you can get better within one session of applying them properly. Another quantum leap in my understanding of martial arts is when I decided to give my mind as much attention as I did my body. It all clicked for me when I combined what I learned from my dad, my first and main martial arts teacher, my Wing Chun Sifu, Sam, and my philosophy professors at university. They helped me bridge the gap between the physical, the mental, and the spiritual parts of martial arts. Until this stage in my early 20s, I almost couldn't believe that I didn't fully make this connection earlier on. Sure, I understood that martial arts instills great discipline, great confidence, life energy, and much more. But I didn't truly see how I could use martial arts as the vehicle to improve every other part of my life and to be a guiding force for good. And that's something that modern men so desperately need. It's what has led me to focus on my mission of creating a movement of 10 million dads who lead by example. And to help you be one of these men, here are a few simple philosophy and martial arts based reads that level up your mind, your body, and your training. Number 1 is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Number 2 is The Art of Peace by Morihei Ueshiba. Number 3 is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Number 4 is Karate Do, My Way of Life by Gichin Funakoshi. Number 5 is Be Like Water, Practical Wisdom from the Martial Arts by Joseph Cardillo. If you want more reading recommendations like this, let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to put a list together for you. Being able to self-analyze yourself with honesty, clarity, and the awareness to decide what steps to take next is a powerful mental frame to hold. To do this though, you need a few simple tools and feedback mechanisms which serve to honestly describe what is happening with your martial arts practice. There will be no hiding from the truth here. You must take a hard, honest look at how you express yourself in your style, then make the necessary adjustments. There are 2 main ways to do this. The first way is to have a mirror present, ideally a full body length one, and do your training in front of it. The mirror is a great tool as it gives you instant feedback that you can implement in the next rep. So let's say you throw a jab and then your hand retracts towards your waist rather than your chin. You can correct that immediately. Or you feel off balance and you take a look at your fighting stance as you're throwing your combination and you can see that it's too narrow and too long. The second way is to record yourself training. Simply put your phone in a position where you can capture your full body during the course of its movement and then review the footage afterwards. The best way to do this is to record the footage for various individual techniques, combinations, and so on. Then after each session, go through the footage and ask yourself these questions. What did I do well in each of these videos? How can I improve the next time I execute it? Why am I struggling with this particular movement? If you're serious, make written notes in a journal, or like our students, use our app so that you have a historical record of your training, observations, and your progress too. Just because you're learning how to do martial arts at home, don't think that it's not possible to get feedback from a coach who has helped other students like you too. If you're serious about learning martial arts at home, invest in a coach who's serious about not just your martial arts development, but your overall growth in your mind, your body, and your spirit too. This is how my students use martial arts as a way of life. So choose a coach the same way you would choose a martial arts dojo in person. Find the right one that you get on with, you respect, and that you genuinely want to learn from. Focus on finding someone who can teach you genuine martial arts, but also how to apply it to the rest of your life too. Lastly, make your learning of martial arts at home more likely to stick around by joining a community. There's nothing like being on a similar path of learning martial arts, especially with a like-minded group of men who are all there to be their best. Whether it's my community of men and dads who are using martial arts to build their warrior physique, create a Zen work-life balance, and lead their families by example, or if it's another, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you surround yourself with a community who are there to help you get better at martial arts, this thing called life, and have your best interests at heart. Find the one that you connect with and that gives you the most value. And that's a wrap for how to do martial arts at home. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more content on building your warrior's physique and leading your family by example. And remember, it's time to regain balance and to maintain order, my fellow warriors.